Alright, this is probably my last video, or at least my last of this kind of like motivational, like, here's the shit I've learned, I'm sending it out into the ether kind of video. The reason I'm making this tonight is because I woke up this morning and got on my phone and saw I had a notification from this old video I made like a couple years ago. It was a 90-day Nofap report testimonial type video, which, I haven't looked at that in a long time. I'm not really like, I don't do that kind of stuff anymore. Like, I'm not involved with any of that. So I hadn't seen the video in a long time, and I watched a little bit of it today and just noticed some things about myself that I really, me being myself, I didn't really like these things that I noticed, but they're not like bad things. They're just things that I noticed that like, I need to give some kind of an update, because the last video I made was just, I'm not satisfied with it. It was very, incomplete, and I feel like I was in a very kind of fragmented place as a person trying to give this advice about like, my experiences, what I learned, and all this shit. Two things I noticed that made me want to make another video. One, my energy. I feel like I had this very kind of passive, very subordinate, kind of like quiet, timid energy about me. That's just not true to who I am anymore. But I noticed that I just talked like I was, I felt like I had to prove myself to even make, it was like I was talking like, I had to demonstrate that I, was worthwhile enough to make the video. I don't know, I noticed something, like there's a big chunk of the Paley that I know now that was missing from that video, and it would be worthwhile for me to give some kind of an update on what that is and how that relates to my growth as a person and how that might relate to your healing process. So I noticed some things on an energetic level looking at myself in this video. I also noticed the words I was using, talking about being an addict, being a porn addict, being in recovery, recovering from addiction. Like the terminology I was using was very specific. It was very narrow, and I've come to realize that the way we speak about ourselves has a huge bearing on our thought processes, obviously, our belief systems, kind of how we view ourselves in relation to other people. So it has pretty dramatic effects on how we live in the world, the way the words we use. And I just noticed that I was using lingo that's just that I don't use anymore because it's harmful. Because I don't, at least in my experience, it's destructive. It's not helpful. So I noticed like the way I was speaking, like the words I was using, and my energy were both like off. Like they were both like, I feel like I need to give more clarity now that I've reached a point where I feel like I've really come into my being, so to speak. Like I feel a lot more comfortable in my skin now. And I look back on that and notice there's a lot of shit that I didn't know then that I know now, and hasn't been that long. I mean, I'm 22. I made the video when I was 20. It was like 2 years ago. Made another video last year with my girlfriend talking about like porn, recovery, addiction. That shit is all like, I want to brush that shit to the side and really just lay it out. These are the insights that I've gained, and hopefully they'll be helpful to some of you. So, yeah, number one is like, do away with the language, like talking about yourself as an addict and talking about like being in recovery, and like abstinence, and like how many days have you gone, and like all this like, and being a part of a recovery community, and like recovering from addiction. Just this way of thinking, it may be helpful in the beginning, and for me it was, but I grew out of that. And I think anyone who is progressing pretty well in their own path of self-discovery and growth is gonna like I mean, I have pretty deep qualms with the whole 12-step AA lingo, so that's kind of like in that category. So some people, that's the way they are oriented for most of their lives, and I'm not going to go into a big upheaval of that tradition in this video, because it's just this isn't the time or place. But I will say that for me, a sign of progressing is moving away from that, of identifying with my past addictive behaviors, of talking about it as if it defines me as a person, or as if it gets at some core part of my identity. That's not true. It's not true. I developed pretty unhealthy sexual behaviors, including the use of porn, compulsive porn use, as a result of my experiences as a kid and growing up in the household that I grew up in, and my conditioning and all that stuff. So I see it more as a developmental process rather than some core part of like my identity, as if that exists somewhere out there or somewhere in here that doesn't change and evolve over time. I mean, we're not the same person now that we were 10 years ago, and we won't be in 10 years. So that's one thing I want to say, is like, it's important to have a more fluid understanding of like where you're going in your development, what it means to be struggling with porn. I mean, stop seeing yourself as an addict. Stop seeing yourself as like someone with an addiction. I mean, I get it that it's a helpful way to frame things, at least in the early stages. This whole like, oh, I need to go a certain number of days to really experience what it's like to not have an addiction, blah, 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 blah. That's fine. I mean, for those of you who are just starting out, that's probably what you need for quite a while. But over time, it's probably going to be a good idea to move away from that, because it's no longer about like the number of days since you've watched porn. Like, it's no longer about porn at all. Like, porn will just, if you're really making changes and you're digging into yourself and you're doing the work, porn just kind of drifts away. I mean, so I'll talk a little bit about my experience. So I just graduated from college, and I'm planning to pursue a graduate degree in counseling psychology with a specialization in working with trauma, particularly developmental trauma, which is distinct from PTSD. Developmental trauma is something that a lot of people experience, that I experienced, that has more to do with ongoing sort of chronic dysfunction in families, in rearing environments. So if there's an alcoholic in the family, if there's any kind of dysfunction, narcissistic parents or codependency or any of that stuff. I mean, the percentage of kids that have a slice of some dysfunction and trauma in their childhood is pretty damn high. So we're not special cases in this regard. But so I see the development of my addictive behaviors as a product of kind of how I developed as a person. That was a pretty primary coping mechanism for me for most of my life. Growing up in a family with an emotionally unavailable alcoholic father, and a mother who was sort of the flip side, sort of emotionally invasive and almost kind of there's a term called emotional incest. So there's a little bit of that going on. Me kind of taking on a role that I shouldn't have when I was a kid. So the point being, see the development of your addiction, in with a bird's eye view of like, how did this come? What is this really pointing to? Everyone's got those like core deep issues that they need to get to, and porn is just like the top fucking layer. Porn is never like the problem. Porn is not the problem. Okay, so you cut out porn, there's a host of other things that are going to come up over time, and it's not about just getting porn out of your life. Like that whole mindset of like, oh, I just need to quit porn and then my life will be better. You'll see over time. I mean, don't take my word for it. That's what I thought for a while. I thought it was all about like getting a girlfriend or having a successful sexual relationship or having like confidence in social interactions, which I felt like porn was, causing all this shame and social anxiety, and I couldn't interact with people. So I thought that was like, oh, I just need to get rid of porn and all that stuff will just resolve itself and I'll be happy and I'll find a girlfriend and blah, 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 and shit's gonna be peachy and all that crap. So I think that's a pretty naive kind of expectation that a lot of young dudes have. Sociable Cider Works, shout out. This is great cider. I'm doing this video in my car because I have roommates and I thought I might get a little energetic in this video. So, it is later in the evening, so I want to have a little bit of space to kind of share my shit and not be inhibited by, being in the space. It's a little bit more constricting inside. So anyway, from my car. So what else do I want to say? So here's been my experience. Since kind of, okay, first of all, therapy is fucking important. Find a good therapist. And I'm going to say something right now, as someone who's going into counseling psychology, who kind of knows where addiction and developmental trauma and all these kind of emotional wounds that a lot of people that struggle with porn have, a lot of young guys that deal with this have some of this stuff going on. CBT and all the kind of behavioral, very surface level, like cognitive type therapies, they're not gonna cut it, most likely. If you have some core developmental wounds, which most likely, if porn has been a huge problem in your life, you probably have some wounds that need healing, that you need to grow through, and traditional talk therapy is not quite gonna do it. Now, not everybody needs to just run and find a therapist. I mean, people have ways of developing on their own, and I always admire people who don't look for outside help and kind of just do their own thing and create their own program and blah blah blah, and that's cool. And for some people that works, but I think those are rare individuals who can do that themselves. So my point here with therapy is that shit's important. And do not sell yourself short. So here's what I've done. I've done CBT. I've done EMDR. I've done like psychodynamic. I've had therapy with psychodynamic therapists. I've done, 12-step groups, all that shit. For me, no, it didn't even scratch the surface of like the core wounds. So here's what you need to look at. And this is the field of psychology that I'm going into. You need to find a therapist. Well, you don't need to do anything. Let me just qualify my entire video right now by saying, take all this shit with a grain of salt, fucking toss it aside if it doesn't sound right for you. I'm not trying to like dictate this is how you need to do things, so nobody fucking get on my ass about that. But I'm gonna talk in those terms because this shit's important and some of you are gonna listen to me. So you need to find a therapist that works. A modality that actually gets to the core wounds. Here are the things that work. Here are the kind of cutting edge approaches to psychotherapy that anyone struggling with porn and all the associated emotional trauma and issues would benefit from. A therapist that specializes in somatic psychotherapy. So that is a body focused therapy. So here are some names. Hakomi, the Hakomi method, developed by Ron Kurtz. This shit is really good. Find a therapist that has some understanding of that, or a certification in that. Hakomi, sensory motor therapy. There's something now called NARM, the neuroaffective relational model. Somatic experiencing. These are body-based therapies, and the implicit assumption here is that emotional wounds and trauma, which are arguably the main causes or precursors of any kind of addictive behavior or anxiety disorders, or a lot of this shit come from traumatic experiences or emotional turmoil in a child's developmental years. That shit gets held in your body. So the belief, and this is backed by the emerging sort of psychophysiology, neuroscience and all this shit is kind of confirming all of this. That emotions are held in the body. So emotional trauma is actually stored in the body. And so a body-focused therapy helps to release that. And that is an extremely liberating process. Very, very, it's extremely powerful. So that's one suggestion. And that's something that has been hugely beneficial for me. So what I realize is that, like, a lot of the shit that I have been, that's been coming up for me, like, chronic anxiety and, porn and just all this shit that I used to think was, like, actually a big deal is so fucking simple. I have a lot of suppressed anger, okay, and that manifests in my body, particularly in my jaw. And I also have a lot of, like, tension in my muscles. And so one big thing for me has been to release that anger, to express it, to express my emotions, to express anger. I used to be the kind of person, and this is kind of what I was getting at when I said that I was really passive in one of those videos, is that, when someone is so passive and, like, they're not, you can just tell that, like, you could poke them and you could just, like, poke at them and they're just kind of like, they're not really, you don't feel much aliveness from them. A lot of times that's like, there's some suppressed emotion there, because humans are meant to be alive. Not everyone has the same kind of energetic, disposition, but we're not meant to be these little dull fucking, like, robots that just walk around like machines. We're supposed to be engaged. We're supposed to thrive and really feel alive as human beings. And so I was noticing that in my video, and that's been a huge thing for me, has been to get in touch with my anger. I used to be someone who, it was hard for me to say no to people. I was very, like, passive aggressive, and I didn't have very good boundaries at all. It was really easy for me to feel, like, invaded by people or put down, very, like, overly sensitive to people's judgments of me and all that stuff. And I had really impulsive anger. Like, it would only show up rarely, but it would show up, like, if my partner triggered me, then I would just feel, like, this rage where I was afraid that I was going to hurt her. So, like, it would come out sideways. So there's a lot of shit going on. I had problems with my jaw, like TMJ, and I do a lot of teeth grinding in my sleep. It's really kind of messed up. But so all of this stuff kind of pointed to, and the therapist I was working with, part of the Hakomi method is doing experiments that we can kind of, like, confirm or disprove certain theories that we develop about. Hakomi is all, like, it's about self-discovery. So the therapist is really just kind of helping you discover your own truth, and the body, the idea is that the body will reveal that truth if you listen to it, if you tune into it, if you're mindful of it. So this is a mindfulness-based approach. We did this experiment once where I was just supposed to say, I was just saying no back and forth with my therapist. He would say no, I would say no, he would say no. And what he noticed and what he explained to me afterwards was that during that exercise, it was always just like, no, 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 no. There was never, like, any fluctuation in tone, no change in, like, in aggression, and this kind of monotonous, like, very passive sort of response to this kind of exercise often is an indicator that there's something's not online. And not to mention, with my chronic anxiety, it was like, one kind of framework for understanding emotional processes is that if someone who struggles with a lot of anxiety, there's not much protection happening for them. So anxiety is just the signal that the person needs to be protected. So if there's no anger response to protect, anger is supposed to protect and ward off a threat. So if anger's not working, if it's been suppressed and it's being held back and not expressed, then anxiety just gets free reign, and you're just stuck in this, like, pool of worry and self-conscious. It's just this fucking unbelievable just kind of emotional trap, So I had chronic anxiety for a long time that has since gone away since I've gotten in touch with my anger. So big thing is like getting in touch with what your real emotions are, what your real emotional responses are. A lot of people have suppressed emotions. For me, it was anger and sadness. I had a lot of that shit built up. So find a good therapist who can help you work through that. And not all therapists are good. I would say, and I'm planning to go into this field, and I would say most therapists are not that good. So really find someone who actually knows what they're doing. They're few and far between, and I've given you some names and some theoretical approaches that I have faith in, that I understand the basis of, and that have worked for me. And so that's what I'm throwing that out there. Another thing that I think is important is first of all, read this book called Healing Developmental Trauma. It's written by Aline Lapierre and Lawrence Heller. Read that. Peter Levine is another name. Ron Kurtz. Look these people up. They know what they're doing. This is the shit that you're going to need to dive into a little bit to really understand kind of the growth process that is likely something you'll need to go into to move beyond addictive patterns of behavior and stuff like that. So I've gotten to a point with my own process where like porn is not like, I don't remember, it's been months since I looked at porn, and it's not a problem for me anymore. There's no sense that I'm not afraid of, there's just, my life is not, I'm not a recovering addict. I'm a healthy person who has an interesting history. That's so. Okay, so big insights for me that have come, that have really just opened up the floodgates of like growth for me and engagement. I've had social anxiety for a long ass time, and honestly, that was what originally brought me to want to recover from my porn addiction. I remember like a couple years ago when I first thought, maybe me feeling so fucking afraid every time I'm around people has something to do with the fact that I'm always looking at porn, that I'm looking at porn like 4 times a day. Turned out there was a correlation, but the social anxiety went a lot deeper than that. So what I noticed, what I have discovered is that, and this is stuff that I learned in therapy, that I learned from that book, so Healing Developmental Trauma, read that fucking book. I guarantee you'll thank me for recommending it to you. So there's a survival style in that book called the autonomy survival style. This is something I identify with, and basically it is the idea that growing up, whether there are a couple of scenarios where this could develop, either in very rigid authoritarian, wow, I've had a little bit to drink, authoritarian family dynamics where, the parents are extremely strict and withhold their affection and love if you disobey them, that kind of shit. And, if there's a situation where there is a mother, usually it's the mother who feels somewhat abandoned by the child's developing independence and autonomy, which is usually around like the age of 2, and uses like threats, either covert or overt, or disapproval or rejection or withholding love as a way of kind of like controlling the child's developing sense of independence. This leads to the child believing that expressing their independence and their autonomy is dangerous, should be avoided. And that shows up in every single interaction. You know why? Because in every interaction, when you approach someone, when someone approaches you, when there's engagement happening, there's always an opportunity for you as the individual to decide, how do I want to act in this situation? What does it mean to be me right now? Like, do I want to be silly? Do I want to be stupid? Do I want to be fucking loud? Do I want to be really soft? Do I want to like, like there's just infinite possibilities of how to act socially with people. Like, do I want to fucking poke this person? Do I want to like slap them in the face? Do I want to pull their hair? Do I want to fuck them in the ass? Whatever. That there's independence in that. That's autonomy. So to see that whole process of like deciding who do I want to be in this situation as threatening, that leaves you at the mercy of, oh shit, I need to please this person or else they're going to reject me, abandon me. It's going to replay all this like emotional shit that I went through as a kid. And so I need to please this person. I need to foreclose and turn off the part of myself that really wants to show itself, which is the part of me that's independent and makes my own decisions and has boundaries and is not afraid of being rejected and is very at peace with myself. That part of myself I have not allowed to show up in my interactions for pretty much my entire life up until the past few months. And I realized that recently. Where I'm afraid either of being rejected or I'm afraid that people are going to try and take from me like my mom did. I felt like my mom was always kind of like expecting me to share my emotional life with her. I think because she didn't get much from my dad because he was drinking a lot growing up. So she kind of turned to me as her like source of emotional stimulation. So I always felt like my independence was crushed, not only because I would be rejected if I expressed it, but also because she would take from me. She would like force me to kind of like share my experience with her when I didn't want to. And so that also makes me feel threatened by other people, where it's like, oh shit, these people want something from me that I don't want to give them. So there's this like replaying of like childhood patterns that I've noticed that's been happening in my interactions with people. And that has been absolutely the most monumental paradigm shifting realization I've had in my entire life. There's a kind of veil that has been lifted now where I feel like my social anxiety is no longer like it's a joke. Like it's not, I can see what it is now. It's that I'm afraid that I can't be myself around people because I'm a very like playful, like silly, stupid, provocative kind of person. I don't like to be this passive like friend who just says all the right things and is just like this good guy. That's not me, and I'm not an asshole. It's just that like I like to have this edge, this charge about me. I like to kind of like provoke people and poke at them and like, but in a loving way, because there's nothing sinister here. It's just that like, to feel alive, I want to be a little bit more engaged with people. I want to play with people a little bit more. But that part of me, that's my like authentic, like this is myself. But I've always felt like I was never able to share that with people because I was afraid of sharing that because I wasn't allowed to growing up. Or because people would want to take things from me. And so these dynamics I've noticed and have just transformed my functioning as a person. And I've realized that my ability to engage others is a huge core part of why porn ever became a part of my life, because I couldn't engage people. So I needed connection from something, from somebody. I didn't get it from my family. I couldn't get it from people in my life because I felt like sabotaged by my own internal, process and patterns of shutting down, and shame was a big thing too. It was like feeling shame was, so here's another big insight, is that there's no part of the self that should be judged, or should be seen as like bad. See, the part of me that shames me for doing things, I have a judge inside of me that I speak to. So first of all, you need to start fucking connecting to yourself and talking to yourself. Like, develop a connection with your inner child. Fucking care for that. Tell that child that you will meet all that child's needs, that all of you is allowed, that I will protect you. Give yourself some fucking messages, dude. And this is not, like, this is important. You need to parent yourself. Give yourself a fucking hug. These are things that, like, actually change brain chemistry and are very important for people that have, like, abandonment issues. Like, a lot of shit that comes up that's just, like, par for the course when you're kind of doing this personal development shit. So anyway, I lost my train of thought. But anyway, do that shit. talk to yourself, connect with yourself. So when you don't have connection with people and you haven't developed a relationship with yourself, so there are two selves, there are many different parts of you. There are plenty of different selves inside of you that you can engage with. For me, there's a judge, there's a warrior, there's a child that needs to be taken care of. There's a playful, innocent little infant that wants to go touch people and poke them. There's a really sexual part of me, that like we're all composed of parts. And there's also an adult side of me that's steering the ship, that needs to have a relationship with those other parts. You need to have a dialogue with yourself. It doesn't just happen where you can just like avoid that, because a lot of times people that need to do that with themselves, they were not given that connection growing up from their caregivers. So you need to create that for yourself. And so if you don't have that connection growing up and you don't have it with yourself because you haven't learned how to do that yet, of course, porn is like that. It's like our subconscious brain's, best attempt at connecting with something, because I really felt like I could just let loose and escape in porn. And so I think that's part of the value of it for people, is that it's a misguided effort to connect, because we all need connection. So anyway, I've noticed that since I have kind of taken this step forward in understanding my own processes of development and what has held me back socially, what has kept these addictive patterns alive in me, things have changed radically. Like I used to be someone who's really timid, who was afraid of talking to people. Now I just approach random people and like engage them, and my energy is like really, people respond well to it. It's a very like, it's good. Like I'm in a good place, and it's been a process of like getting into my body, talking to myself, having a relationship with myself, messing with my brain chemistry a bit. I've actually taken some supplements. I don't take any like prescription drugs or antidepressants or any of that shit. I think those are all can be pretty dangerous, actually. But I've taken so I had a GABA deficiency. So part of this is like inquiring into yourself. So if you have chronic anxiety, maybe suppressed anger is a piece of it, a big piece of it, actually. There's probably other pieces too. Diet. I've changed my diet a lot. I started taking supplements. So glutamine and taurine are actually precursors to GABA. So if you supplement with those, if you have a GABA deficiency, you tend to get overwhelmed very easily. Little stressors seem to be the most catastrophic. Like they can ruin your day, and you'll just obsess about them over and over again. This kind of cyclical, anxious, paranoid, like I can't be myself. I'm afraid I'm gonna die. Blah blah blah. All this like crazy anxiety. So, you need to like start inquiring into what's going on in your life, dude. What's holding you back from being alive? Everyone has this vitality, this aliveness, this energy that is waiting to be tapped into. A lot of people have it. There are barriers that keep them from experiencing that with themselves because of traumatic experiences growing up, or because of, whatever kind of painful experiences they've had. So it's important to delve into that, man. My life is 1,000 times different now than it was fucking 5 months ago when I made that last video, when I was like this quiet little dude talking about, like addiction recovery and Nofap and 90 days and fuck that, dude. Whatever. If that's where you're at, fine, accept that. But no, just have this knowledge. It's a lot more than that shit. And you need to remain like committed to being your best self, okay? It's not about perfectionism, but it is about like wishing the best for yourself. It's a matter of self-respect, honestly. Like someone who just lets themselves like wallow in this fucking like pathetic, like watching porn 10 hours a day, like no connections to anyone, like feeling depressed all the time, brain fog, shit. Like, I get it. It's hard to pull yourself out of that, especially if you don't have social connections, if you feel like if this is stuff that's been going on for most of your life. I get it. I went through that shit too. I felt suicidal for quite a while. Like, shit's hard, man. But you need to like have a commitment to like making your life as good as it can be, and there's beautiful opportunities waiting for you. Like I never thought that I would decided to like move to California to become a counselor at like this really awesome institute for trauma treatment and somatic psychology. Like, that's fucking awesome. I have a beautiful girlfriend. I'm moving there to San Francisco with her in a year. I have a great friend group. Like, I feel like I can just approach people. Like, I have this like freedom and spontaneity about me. Like, I'm just understanding more about my life. Things are fucking clicking, dude. And you know, I can't point to one thing and be like, that's what did it. But like, it's just this commitment to like not giving up, to not settling for a mediocre life. You know, even if like, you know, I get it. There's a side of you that's probably judging yourself, which there is in me too, where it's like, well, your problems aren't that bad. They're, I've done a lot of travel. So in India, you know, I saw a lot of poverty. So part of me is like, well, at least you're not fucking like, you know, in the outskirts of Delhi living in a fucking, you know, mud pit with pigs. Yeah, okay. But that doesn't mean that we should neglect self-realization and personal development just because like we're more privileged than certain people. Like that line of thinking, like it's good to have an understanding of like your position in society and have some humility about it. But if that's going to be like immobilizing or like paralyzing, like, oh shit, I've got it, my problems don't mean anything. No, dude, your problems do mean something. Every person deserves happiness, joy, freedom, health, vitality, all this shit. So if you're not getting that, you don't need any other reason to get after that and fix it. I don't care if you're like better off than other people. It's not about like being better than you. It's not about like, oh, I've got it less shitty than this person. How about just for yourself? Like, what does it mean to enjoy your life? Like, it's not about comparing yourself to other people and shit like that. So, goddamn, this is 36 minutes long right now. No one's gonna watch this entire thing. All right. Is there anything else that I've missed? So those are the big insights for me. Being a huge people pleaser, not being myself around people, not being authentic and transparent about where I'm coming from. So like social dynamics and that kind of stuff are important to inquire into. Yeah, and get angry. Like I guarantee you, if you're in this place where there's not much happening for you and you feel depressed and sad and quiet and small, there is more energy inside of you, okay? And it's going to take a while to dig out, but like it's there and it wants to come out. Talk to yourself. You need to have a loving relationship with yourself. That's what led me out of like, I've struggled a lot with like abandonment issues with my girlfriend and stuff, and those are extremely painful. And developing a relationship with myself where I can love myself and give myself those messages that I was trying to get from her, that solves codependency. That solves, fears of abandonment. Like, yeah, learn about this shit. Find a good therapist, man. And for those of you who have actually sat through this entire thing, yeah, good looks. Yeah, okay, that's pretty much it. If anyone wants to, fucking share ideas and shit, whatever, let's do it. Cheers.